Thank you, Minister. It's nice to see you again for this debate this evening. Firstly, I want to congratulate Senator Éireann on her work on this bill, and to my embarrassment, it is something that I wasn't too well briefed on before this bill, and I'm very grateful for her and her highlighting this work and advocating for this change. Working to create a safer and more just place for everyone. And I personally very much welcome this debate today and this bill, and I'm very glad to say that we're supporting it and that we don't oppose this bill, and it is my pleasure to support you in getting this legislative change. And I'm very proud to be a very tiny cog in your wheel pushing this through, so well done. When I was reading this bill and learning about it, it stirred up so much anxiety for me. We're dealing with a legacy of silence. We're dealing with placing victims, and you could say in purgatory. And the idea of non-disclosure agreements made me think in Ireland we almost had them by default, by default through fear and on a fear speaking up, and until those brave victims rose up, stood up and told their truth. And again, we've seen how secrecy and the consequences of moving abusers from one place to another, protecting a lowlife, a creep, and putting more people at risk of abuse. And I listened to the webinar you organised, Senator, and I was so sad to hear of that concept of moving the trash by Julie McFarlane. And it was a new term to me, and it was coined to describe that continued protection of abusers, moving them from one organisation to the next. And unfortunately that is such a familiar tale in this country, particularly unfortunately in the church. The contributors to your webinar, Senator, were enlightening, deeply upsetting, and as we as a country, we should never hand abusers and the employers the get out of jail card. It is outrageous that non-disclosure agreements are used against a victim and to reduce a victim's rights. The law should always be actively weighted in favour of the victim and not against. And it is definitely not in any public interest to bury abuse cases. Currently there is, as you said, no legislative provisions in place governing NDAs or confidential clauses in settlement agreements, and the extent of the use of NDAs in Ireland in these circumstances are currently unknown. But let's hope that we can get to the bottom of that and lift the lid on some of these happenings. I absolutely agree the public interest is in ensuring that instances of harassment and discrimination in the workplace are not concealed. And as you've rightly said, and it's very welcome, that the right of a victim to negotiate their own settlement to protect their own privacy is so important and should always be respected. This bill empowers the victim. It empowers an individual to have ownership of their abuse, their life experience, and the choice to give back. And it should always be in the victim's hands. Whatever is the next step, it should always be in the victim's hands. And abuse, whatever form it comes in, it is all about the destruction of an individual's power, their person, their agency. And in my opinion, a non-disclosure agreement, in fact, continues to take the power away from victims. And an issue that came up that made me feel so uncomfortable was that the abuse was almost classed as a trade secret. That somebody else's truth, somebody else's crime is treated like a corporate act. Abuse and discrimination is against the law, and it highlights another issue: cases of abuse, sexual violence, when a victim almost is put on trial. And every step along the way, the distribution of justice is most definitely not in the victim's favour. But thankfully, there are some reforms and reviews going on in the Department of Justice, so hopefully that will help along the way with that. A company, in my opinion, has no business in the matter of policing abuse. They need to have no business in treating it as a trade secret. Some NDAs, as the Senator said, actually work to subvert the course of justice. And in conclusion, Minister and Cathaoirleach, this bill will be a global template. For a country who is still dealing with the legacy of abuse, of silence, it would be one way that this country can go about it and getting its good name back. Let us stand with the victims and support them. Let's stand up and stand with them. And there's no place for the protection of the abusers. And I just want to say thank you. I very much welcome this bill. Thank you.